Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports, the Saturday Sports Special. It's our weekend program of TalkSports where we discuss, among many things, what's happening around with sports, not just in Grenada, Caribbean, just about everywhere. Well, it has been a very trying week for those in the Caribbean region in particular, sports in particular. Uh, Taken a hard hit, well, except probably for the CPL, because I know it's continuing. But we have been hearing from the various authorities across the region the cancellation of many sporting events, sporting activities, lockdowns, and no movement days, as they call it. Grenada is no exception. Jamaica has had it for a period of time. I know Dominica recently had it, and some other territories do have in their own because the cases, that's the COVID-19 positive cases, are skyrocketing. I know St. Lucia in just one day had over 200 cases. Grenada in itself had, 100 and something. Well, it keeps climbing. And a death toll that was predominantly just one, it's now five. It's one too many, I would say. But in particular for sports, and today, even though it's an open discussion day, I particularly want to raise this particular issue. Should athletes get or consider the COVID-19 vaccine? What do you really think about that? What's on your mind regarding this issue? And in sporting circle we basically zero it on. We are I personally, I'm no medical expert, but for those who are involved in sports or they have other ideas, do you think that athletes, should they get or consider having the COVID-19 vaccine? What's on your mind about that? It's I know it's something that is very personal for some people. Obviously, they will not want to, disclose whether or not they had the vaccine or whether they plan to have the vaccine, etc., etc. But so be it. It's certainly something that is worth discussing, especially for sports, because we see how it's affecting, sports in particular, as we know in some areas. In some jurisdiction, I should say, that they announced that only vaccinated athletes, meaning those who have been vaccinated, when I say athletes, it's not just track and field, sportsmen and sportswomen are allowed to compete in some sporting events, Here in New York, for example, that is the case, and I know it's similarly in other places that that is very, very thing. So it's a bit of departure from the normal context, in terms of, but the whole issue of should athletes get or consider COVID-19 vaccine, and while it seems sort of important for everyone to get vaccinated, should active athletic people be especially eager to do everything they can to avoid becoming infected with COVID? If so, why? What's your thinking? Oh, right. Right off the bat. Good afternoon to you, Edwin. Mr. B, my simple answer is yes, or you don't participate. Yes, I know. You don't need to tell me. I'm too a bit distracted because college football has started, Edwin. Yes, but some people have this notion that if you do not want to be, it's just as if you not prepared to wear a mask, you automatically refusing services. Okay. Likewise, for some, they're saying if you're not vaccinated, you cannot be in it. I was in a restaurant yesterday, and the sign actually read that mask is mandatory. Wearing of a mask is mandatory. If you're not please do not be allowed to be escorted. It sounds a bit jovial, but I think they try to be as polite as possible. Yes, Rudian, yes, athletes should. The answer is okay. Yes, yes. Dr. Renault is telling me yes that athletes should. Um, so, as again, I'm saying that should, if you think they should, then why you think they should. The big question, I should say, is why. Why you think they should be vaccinated. Certainly it's something that needs to be discussed. So here I put it there. While it seems important for everyone to get vaccinated, should active athletic people be especially eager to do everything they can to avoid becoming infected with SARS-CoV-2? If so, why? Okay. Yeah, let me get some more responses. But I also believe the athletes should talk to their doctors before taking it. Alana says definitely yes. Okay, yeah. Rudy, and I agree. Must be some, get a medical opinion, as if because I think a lot of people are a bit confused, and confused sometimes for the wrong reason. I think they indulge themselves so much in social media that they get swamped with so many, conspiracies that they are left confused. Like I asked someone recently whether or not they ever question vaccine for measles, for mumps, etc., and they were like, no, but they could not continue with the conversation, and I guess because at that time there wasn't internet and social media and all these conspiracies, etc., etc. Now, every time you turn, there is some person purporting to be some expert saying this and saying that, and there's so much mass confusion, I should say, that it certainly leaving a lot to be desired in terms of what should people really do. So as you rightly said, Rudian, they should at least consult their doctors, a medical expert, to get an opinion on that. So it remains the same. Should athletes get or consider the COVID-19 vaccine? And what do you think? So I was trying to get back to some more information regarding even, in New York City, for example, where the mayor, okay, I think it was only in September, just last month. In fact, Mayor, if I may just read, allow me to, Mayor Bill de Blasio issued a COVID-19 vaccine mandate for roughly 20,000 New York City public school athletes who play high-risk sports like football, the American football, volleyball, and wrestling. The mayor broke the news during his almost weekly interview with less than a month to go before the start of the fall semester. So yeah, that was last month. So it starts actually September 13th, right? De Blasio's order comes a week after New York State Education Department released a 21-page long health and safety guide for schools, virtually identical to current guidance from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. In its guidance, it recommends that schools located in areas with high COVID-19 transmission rates cancel all high-risk sports and activities like band and choir unless all participating students are vaccinated. So the question now is that in a case like Grenada, for example, in Jamaica and other territories where there are high-risk areas, and is it the right decision for the authorities to cancel sporting events? And in some instances, I think they would have delayed the reopening of schools, in particular, well, we know that at this time of the year, the sporting events that normally will take place in the Grenada and the other Caribbean countries, particularly like football. And when I say football, I refer to football, right? Football, right? I don't say soccer, I say football, right? Netball, these sort of events, volleyball, well, cross country racing, not necessarily track and field in the Caribbean at this time. They more get into their preparation. So they do, the road races, cross country, etc., until, the start of the new year. But, particularly netball, football, basketball, these sort of sporting events, whether or not it's right for the authorities to safeguard the students by, canceling these sporting events. Vaccine eligible students interested in playing a high-risk sport this fall in New York must get their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine before the start of competitive play, which differs by sport. For two popular fall sports, football and volleyball, for example, the window of vaccination is slowly closing for the first day of competition. So, they basically set out guidelines for the high risk, what they call the high risk sports, wrestling, football, American football, volleyball, etc. So, there are safeguards, being issued, okay? But whether or not the athletes, the coaches, the schools, whatever, are following it. The good thing about it is that when the authorities issue these directives, especially the Caribbean, unlike North America, Florida, and those other states where, you find, the local government, for example, in the case of Florida, the governor issuing their own directives, etc., etc. Like what, in other states, Louisiana, Texas, etc., etc. But when it comes to the Caribbean, when the government says that schools should close, schools are mandated to use masks, etc., etc., generally it's followed. It's followed. However, we are seeing in the past few days the high rate of infection, in some of the territories, high rate. And just when countries were beginning, those territories were beginning to basically relax and open. Well, the borders are, some of the borders are open. Trinidad, for example, just start opening. They're seeing this, high rate of infection. But let me get back to that whole issue there regarding the substantive question of should athletes get or consider the COVID-19 vaccine. I want to quote from, Dr. Todd Shepard, a noted medical expert in the United States, and he says, and I quote, "Many of the patients I see in consultation for both sports medicine and family medicine conditions are very interested in becoming vaccinated for COVID-19. However, a small amount of patients are less interested because they feel they are young, healthy, and feel they are at low risk of dying from the disease." Hear that again. Some of them, they are not interested because they feel that they are young, healthy, and they are at low risk of dying from the disease. Oh, cow. And, let me just continue with one more again. There are several reasons why it is very important for every adult to get their vaccine when it is available. A couple are very important to athletes. Every athlete trains hundreds of and thousands of hours to improve their performance. COVID infections have already been associated with damage to the heart and the lungs. Can you imagine working and training all of those practice sessions only to see all of those gains lost to a preventable illness? Yeah, and he says so. Death is not only is not the only important outcome from COVID infections, and that is important. Some people believe it's only death. He's saying death is not the only important outcome from COVID infections. Currently, there isn't a complete picture of how many people may face long-term side effects from the infection. Vaccines allow a person to get the protection from COVID infection without having the damage associated with an actual infection. Another important consideration for young athletes to think about is the risk of bringing infections home to family members who might be at higher risk for severe disease. Unlike many of the other choices student athletes make about their health, a disease as contagious as COVID can affect the health of an entire household because home spread is a very common COVID exposure mechanism. And I'm reading an article from today, which basically is stating that there is an outbreak of COVID-19 at the T.A. Marshall Community College in Grenada. T.A. Marshall Community College in Grenada. Let me get some comments here now. Alana John, in work at a school, and the transmission at my school is on the rise, and most of the positive cases are in the athletic department among unvaccinated students in football, that's American football, cross country, and volleyball. So in general, I do think athletes should at least consider taking the vaccine. And Brilliant is saying, if we go back to the Olympic Games, one of the main things is to get to the finish line COVID-free. Yes, we know now that you still can get it even if you get the vaccine. However, you have a better chance to play sports than you not having it. And as Dr. Shepard rightly said, at least we have to also think about the long-term effects. Some people just thinking about, if I get COVID, the only outcome may be death, and no, it's not exactly that. You could, So, as he says, it's better if you prevent, take something that can prevent the illness. Dr. Shepard continues, and I quote, I don't know of anyone involved in high school, college, or recreation sports who hasn't been really frustrated by the unprecedented impact COVID has had on sports calendar during the last 12 months. I'm included, Doc. Whether or not you missed out on regular season games, playoffs, or group bike running events in 2020, 2021 was a total bust for most athletes. 2 interventions will allow us to get back to a more normal schedule and a more normal spectator experience, he wants to say. The first will be getting everyone vaccinated so that they can break the cycle of community transmission, or so-called herd immunity. The state restrictions for athletes are closely tied to the burden of disease in Michigan, and when the data begins to reflect improvement in Michigan's pandemic, well, he was referring to that state, all high school and college athletic season will get back to a more normal appearance. The second intervention that will have the most immediate impact will be the continued use of prevention strategies that are very effective at reducing community spread. Simple, the protocols, washing your hands, etc., wearing gloves, face mask, social distancing, etc., etc. Prevention strategies, very, very important, and they're working, So I still believe that, that we can do what is necessary. And I want to zone in on the Grenada scenario where yesterday, if I may just pull it up, I think yeah, yesterday it was so many. You know, it was phew, it was quite a lot. You know, um, it was whoops. Yeah, let me see. No, that was well. What it was. It was going. It was going. Let me see if I can get. Just bear with me a moment. It was for Friday. 281 cases, new cases, I should say. 281. Oh, yeah, so Grenada was actually in the 200 range. 281. Wow. This to me means that, we in for some, and by the way, we are talking about things that started within the last week or so, a few cases, etc., etc. And it just skyrocketed to 281. Now, St. Lucia, on the other hand, well, I shouldn't say on the other hand, 345 in St. Lucia, 345 new cases in one day. And Grenada, 281 just on Friday. New cases. Oh, and one death, So I think we now move up to 5. How is that impacting sports? It is. And as the Prime Minister in his address, or his speech rather, I would want to say speech, on Friday night, basically announced that, no sporting events, okay? So whatever sporting events were on the calendar for this weekend or probably for the next few days, it appears that all will be scrapped. And then in terms of school as well, because most of the, a lot of the sporting activities around this time would have been geared towards the schools. But then you also have the national associations like the GFA, for example, with its tournaments. I don't know how that will affect the teams already in training, national teams in training. It's probably a good question that could be answered by the Grenada Football Association. Right. Yeah, and things like that. So, Haran, if you listening to me, probably you can just, I will really want to share your information with the viewers. So if you can probably send that on the chat, on the stream chat. Yeah, I will get it up as well, but some very important points. Yeah. So the GFA, for example, I'm wondering how that will affect, because I know the under 20 team, they were in training. That new directives, will that also affect not just competition, but teams, persons in training, all of that, clear directives from probably the authorities to the associations, because obviously it was a speech made by the Prime Minister. I'm certain that there will be directives, whether it's from the Ministry of Health or otherwise, to national associations, etc., or make some general input as it relates to that. Sometimes I think we just leave things for chance, and we didn't know, and we didn't understand, or they didn't explain, etc., etc. I think there should be some clarity as to that, in terms of, no sporting events, but what's about the individuals in training, etc. Can they continue their training? There are people who do their normal training, but in terms of competitive sports, I do understand that. Okay, so these are some of the things, and certainly people don't understand that it has a trickle down effect. Okay, the economy, because we have been, for the entire week, we have been hearing and seeing business places being closed. whether it's the banks, for example, the supermarkets, the I think there was even Nawasa, there was Flow, so it's having an effect, and it's also having an economic effect, socio-economic effect, and sports is sports is no exception, because while we do not have any professional, locally based professional athletes, sportsmen and sportswomen, what it means also is that if someone who is a footballer, a netballer, a cricketer, etc., and they're infected, or they tested positive, or they for some reason they have been exposed, it means they have to quarantine, etc., etc. It means that if they were probably around other teammates, other colleagues, likewise they will have to be quarantined, they will have to do the contact tracing, etc., etc. And it means that person may not be able to go to work, and so it has that trickle down effect that people not really looking at. They're just thinking about this person got infected, this person tested positive, or this person was exposed, and that's where it lies. But you have to look at the effects, the trickle down effect, the domino effect, I will say, and in that context, sports comes in and it also being affected, So we have to be mindful. And the question, should athletes get to consider the COVID-19 vaccine? And some saying yes. I don't know if there's anyone out of the sake of argument may say no. I know probably a few weeks ago, there would have been a lot of, reservations and etc., on such an issue. I don't know if what has transpired over the past few days has had a rude awakening to a lot of people, because, while I do not comment a lot on certain things, I do monitor sometimes. And, I have seen the shift and in tone, and even some of the comments of certain people who were big and bold and boisterous only a few weeks ago regarding, the whole issue of COVID-19 and vaccination, etc. And I don't know whether or not what has happened over the past few days have really changed their minds, that in some instances, they remain bold and boisterous, but they are flipped, and there are those who just gone silent, they out of sight, and I don't know if it's a rude awakening. And it took probably the death of four other persons, because we had one and now it's 5. So it took the death of 4 and hundreds of positive cases for people to start getting serious about this. I recall, a few weeks ago when I was in Grenada, I mentioned the whole issue about the lapse and, just people carefree about in the buses, for example. I was standing on Melville Street and I saw these buses leaving the terminus, and the driver, the conductor, and the passengers were just, there was one bus where I didn't see one single mask, and the bus was actually in traffic, not one single mask in that, and it was packed, it was full, right? 4 passengers in the back, and not one mask, and certain people talking, and all these sort of things, and I was like, wow. If I had found myself in a situation like that, and probably the only person wearing a mask or something, so I would have just, driver, thanks, but drop me, But I spoke about that. I mentioned it. I spoke about it on the program, I recall, and that was a few weeks ago while I was in Grenada. Early the second week in August, and I was like, nah, I know some people were not too comfortable with what I said regarding that, but you know, it was a disaster waiting to happen. You know, we it's not something we should celebrate or you know think over, but it's sort of sad because, as Dr. Shepard was saying, it's preventable. You know, it is preventable, and you know, people just were just you know taking things for granted, and you know, like they said many years ago that you know God is a Grenadian, so whenever a thing with hurricane, bam, 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 no matter with that, blah, 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 you know, all the fussing about, until it was Hurricane Ivan. And then you realize what happened after that. Everyone started taking the weather bulletin and all the advisories, etc. seriously. They were, you know, I recall I was on television doing the program, remember, for those who have memories, and there were people calling in and saying, you know, man, this is a waste of time. I recall the folks in River Road, you know, my village, they were playing football, you know, and I remember the camera crew went out there, they spoke to them, and they were saying, hey, man, come on, we having fun, blah, blah, blah. They were saying, hey, it's serious. You should go home and you should get ready. You should start, you know, whether you have to evacuate, whatever you need to do to prepare. It's a hurricane, it's coming, etc., etc. Then we went down to the Grandlands area. There were folks, you know, on the beach. There were those surfing, you know. There were some people going about their business as usual, you know. And there were people calling in. I remember going back to the studio and then listening to the radio. My good friend Josephine Maguire, she was on air at the time and giving all the information, and there were folks coming in. Josephine, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Everything will be okay. Blah blah blah, thing like that. So, and you know, we shouldn't be worrying. And it's just an opportunity for supermarkets to make money. Blah 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 blah, and things like that. I'm having fun now because I could recall that vividly. In fact, I have the video. You know, and when I got back, there were people calling in, and then a few hours later, it was a different story. There were people crying, there were people bawling, there were people requesting assistance from wherever they were in different parts. They were not heeding the initial advisories because we had the people from the Met Office. I'm saying that to say that it's similar now, that the warning being given all along, and not just people to take the vaccine. It's just, you know, being mindful of the COVID-19 and the social protocols, etc., washing your hands, doing everything that's necessary to prevent it. And people are just back to, as they say, pre-COVID-19, you know, period. Look what's happening in Australia and New Zealand and those places. You know, I'm hearing people are saying that Grenada COVID-free at such, you know, a few months after they were saying Grenada was COVID-free, you know. but yeah, back to our substantive issue, and we've seen how it's really, really affecting sports. Okay. And albeit, you know, those who have sports in a controlled environment, although I was looking at the England-India test match, and you know, the stands were full. Yeah, a lot of people, and I assume they, you know, they have their protocols. In some instances, I think there's some sporting events where only vaccinated folks are allowed, and they have ways of, even though people have been trying to find ways of, you know, circumventing with fake vaccination cards, okay, but you know, they have ways of proving that people are vaccinated, so they're allowing people who are fully vaccinated to attend these sporting events. In England, for example, as you see with the test match, England and India. On the contrary, I saw Sri Lanka and South Africa in the a one-day international today also, and there were virtually no one there in the stands. Okay, so some territories, some countries, they have different ways of doing things. CPL in St. Kitts, basically just the cricketers and few spectators. Okay, few spectators. But look what happened. A player was sent home, was expelled from the CPL because even though he had an emergency, he did not follow the correct protocol. He had an emergency. Apparently, there was a death. I don't know if it was in the family or whatever it is, and he left without securing the necessary permission and following the correct protocol, etc., etc. In that case, even though it was that necessary, he didn't do it correctly, and therefore would have put his other colleagues in at risk, and they have strict protocols regarding that. And it was unfortunate, but that is how it is, and I know some territories, that's how they handle these things. It's all about ensuring that you safeguard the you safeguard them. So I'm just hoping that it will be hopefully, and that's just the operative word, hopefully, that those who are involved in sports and directly to some extent will see it necessary to be to consider. And remember, the operative there is not just should athletes get or consider, so you can get it, but at the same time you can consider it. And as Rudian said, speaking to your medical expert, to your doctor, etc., etc. Are there, Haran Fodo is saying, are there any components in any of the vaccines that may compromise the athlete's eligibility? And I think he was making the point in that he says, and I quote, "I don't have a problem with athletes taking the vaccine. I just hope that there has been a handshake with WADA," and that's the anti-doping agency, World Anti-Doping Agency, to ensure that any substances used will not endanger the athlete's eligibility to compete. Case in point, Brianna Williams from Jamaica, who used cough medicine and was caught with a prohibited substance. Well, in this case, Haran is not so much medication, but more so to do with vaccination. Okay, and certainly the vaccine is something that would have been given its approval, because remember, it's something that even at the Olympics, for example, they were encouraging that athletes should be vaccinated. So it's not anything about medication, and I'm certain that the vaccine, and we have not heard of any athlete having any adverse effects or conditions, rather, with taking the vaccine that would have hampered his or her performance or eligibility, etc., etc. In fact, most of the athletes who would have competed at the Olympic Games would have either been vaccinated or being tested on a regular basis. So I don't think it's a straight case of whether or not it will affect, because remember, it's not taking medication per se. It's you're taking the vaccine, you take the vaccine, and it's just like taking for some people, I should say, it's just like some is like taking the vaccine for the flu, as they call it, the flu shot, measles, mumps, whatever it is, like that. So but I'm certain that by now we should have known whether or not WADA or RADO, Caribbean RADO, whatever, had any issues regarding athletes taking the vaccine. In fact, they have been encouraging athletes to be vaccinated. On the contrary, they have been encouraging athletes to be vaccinated. They have been encouraging athletes to be tested, and things like that. But the issue here is, should the athletes get or consider the COVID-19 vaccine, how it has been affecting them, and how it's affecting not just them, but sports, because especially, for some of the events, because as you recall, at the Olympic Games, for example, Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm just using them as an example, they had a number of their athletes who could not have compete in the Olympic Games because before actual competition, they either were exposed or tested positive, etc., etc. And it meant it was the end of the Olympic dream for some of them. It also meant that they had to be isolated. If I may say, there was an official from Grenada who, when on arrival in Tokyo, was exposed and had to be isolated for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, person had to be isolated. These are the things that happen sometimes. So you see how it's affecting, and mind you, there were situations where you remember the president of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, Mr. Brian Lewis. You remember during while he was in Tokyo, we did an interview, and he was very upset about the lack of adherence to some of the protocols by some Caribbean, and he made it clear, he did not give specifics, and I don't want to pinpoint any of those, but he made it clear there were some Caribbean officials, administrators in particular, who were flaunting the rules and regulations in Tokyo, and he was very, very upset about it, I don't know whether it's something that will be discussed at any upcoming, or whether it was discussed in any of the CONAC meetings, but it was a very upset and angry Brian Lewis then regarding the officials who were flaunting, Caribbean administrators and officials who were flaunting the rules and regulations and the protocols, as well, as he indicated, of the Olympic Games, as he said, putting many of the athletes and other officials at risk. Yeah. So these are the things that, we have to. In the next few minutes, we just have another 17 minutes remaining on the program. So let me see what's coming up on the other stream there. Good question. Despite the level of fitness an athlete should, are they still vulnerable to the side effects? Gerald Joseph is asking about the side effects. Gerald, I'm not a medical expert. I'm not a medical expert, especially in terms of female athletes who are planning to have a child during or after their career. How important is checking a medical expert who is knowledgeable of potential effects of taking the COVID-19 vaccine? Well, as indicated in the start of the program by Rudian Silvan, he suggested that athletes, and as a coach, he's suggesting that as well, that they should consult their doctors, or some medical expert regarding that. If they are in doubt. But please don't Google, don't Google the internet for the answer, right? Because I'm telling you, all the conspiracies and things like that, so they're on top. They're on top. I'm telling you that. They are overwhelming so that they'll get more attention than the real issues. Rudian is saying not everyone gets the side effects. Oh, okay. Not everyone, okay? So that is important. All right, let me see. Whoops, boy. It seems as if, let me see. Okay. All right. Okay. Permit me. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Nice to know you're there. By the way, Paul, you should be somewhere you're still in Germany, right? Brussels, somewhere around there, Zurich or somewhere around there. That's Paul Philip, coach of Anderson Peters. But he just sent me something that is very interesting. Regarding the Diamond League, let me see, COVID protection procedures. In order to check into the hotel, you need one of the two following things. You must have a negative PCR test within 48 hours before departure. If you are vaccinated or have recovered from COVID-19, blah, 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 either your negative PCR result of your COVID certificate have to be shown upon arrival. If you receive a positive test result, there is a delay in processing your test result, then you should contact us immediately. So you see, there's a lot of other information here, but it just shows you that, let me just finish up that one. Other COVID-19 measures during your stay. During your stay, you must follow certain rules. When indoors, you must always wear a face covering except for your own room while training or when you are seated during your meals. Social distancing of at least 1.5 meters must be maintained whenever possible. Make sure to keep your hands sanitized regularly. There will be hand sanitizers accessible on every other corner. And it's also saying during meals, register yourself via the QR code for contact tracing reasons. You will find more details on travel or COVID measures during your stay here below. So even these athletes out there have to undergo certain measures, So I mean, and this to me, it means therefore that it also shows you that where we actually heading to now. And mind you, this might be now. That's Diamond League, etc., etc. But we don't know what is in it for the long term. We don't know what it is in for the long term. We have to prepare. We have to prepare for the long term. And when we say effects, Gerald, getting back to your thing, yes, you were talking about the long-term effects, but we also have to look at the long-term effects in terms of what are the protocols going forward. Because I'm telling you that whether it's hotels, whether airlines, airports, etc., 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 there will be certain permanent features that you will have to accept in the near future. There will be. There's no if or but about it. Let me go back to Alana now. I consulted with both of my kids' doctor before they got vaccinated because I believe it was the right thing to do because they are both active in sport. With the hectic schedule that Nazio had and the fact that there is no more mask mandate or social distancing in Texas, I was advised that it was in his best interest to be vaccinated. There you go, Alana. By the way, Alana, once again, is the mom of Nazio. And also, what's his name? You'll help me. There's a name close to Nazio, but he's also an upcoming athlete, But being very proactive and ensuring that her kids who are athletes and active athletes are vaccinated on the advice of their doctor. And especially in a state as Texas, where there is no mask mandate and there's so much craziness happening in terms of these governors, etc., with their conspiracies, etc., etc. She is taking the proactive step of ensuring that those kids are vaccinated, and especially in the case of Nazio. Nazio has been traveling. He has been to Costa Rica. He's been to Nairobi in Kenya. And he's hopefully in the next month or so off again, representing Grenada, and also in a different state, etc. It was in the best interest to ensure that he's fully vaccinated. That is, all because a parent being very, proactive and concerned and getting the best advice from a medical expert, in this case, a doctor, their doctors, and the doctor advised that it's the best thing to do, while there are others who are continuing to flip-flop. And I don't know something about, and let me just use Grenada as an example. These days, there are so many doctors in Grenada, medical experts. Everyone now, when you go on their social media profile, purporting to be some expert advising this and advising that and all kind of thing about you could take this and you could take that and all kind of, thing like that. So, really? That is what I hope our sportsmen and sportswomen don't do these things. That is what, Haran, I'm fearful of. That is what I'm fearful of, Haran. That when you refer to, side effects and substances and etc., that's not vaccination. That's people that take in all sorts of connections and things like that. So with the hope that they can beat back COVID. And some of them seeing things on the internet and believe in those things. I don't know. A lot of conspiracy out there. Take this, take that. People taking warm medicine, dewormizers and things like that. So come on, really? And somebody posted that on my timeline. They posted that on my timeline in reaction to something regarding the vaccination. Well, I didn't only deleted the post, but I had to delete the person who posted as well. Sorry about that, but no, I don't. No, come on, I'm not making it. Even if it was my mother who did that, I would have deleted her. Serious about that. No. Really? That's what we become. That's what we come into now. And posting these things on my timeline. You could post it somewhere else, not on my timeline. Yeah, and as everybody will say, oh, I'm free to express. Yeah, you're free to. Likewise, I'm free to maintain my sanity. Yeah. So once again, I want to encourage our sportsmen and sportswomen to seek their interests and their best interests. I can only encourage you to do what you think is right. And in some cases, if you're in doubt, consult a medical expert, consult your doctor, right, to get some medical advice on what you should do. Do not go based on what friends say. Do not go based on what you Google on the internet, and these sort of things. Go based on your gut feeling, advice, etc. And even if you get an advice, you can still, base it on your gut feeling, But I know the internet and all these conspiracies, they have been overwhelming. So a lot of people are confused, and rightly so, they are, because whenever they turn on, whether it's their Facebook thing or the Instagram or whatever, there's something that is, well, the anti-vaxxers, we call them, somehow they are growing in numbers, and somehow they are overwhelming, social media, etc. So, surprisingly, I'm seeing people posting things, and I'm certain, I am probably 100+% certain that they do not know anything about that. I am certain about that. They do not know anything. They just posted it because they saw someone posted it, and they don't understand it. Just because this person posted it, they believe it's true, so they'll repost it, or they'll copy it and paste it and post it again. Serious? That's, knowing the person, I know they don't know about it. They have no knowledge. They're not a medical expert. They don't know about it, because I'm certain if you go and you ask them, can you just explain to me what you just put there? What's about X? They won't be able to tell you. But a friend of theirs posted it, so they believe it's true. And they, yeah, girl, I agree with you. Yeah, facts. You know, that's all. That's the kind of life we live in now. I agree with you. Facts. 100%. Blah blah blah. This kind of thing, without even understanding it. You know. But folks, yeah. So this is what I want to leave with you now. That our sportsmen and sportswomen in particular, if you're listening, even our parents, and who have boys and girls involved in sports, right? Boys and girls involved in sports. You should consider what's best for your kids. And as Alana did, she consulted with their doctors. You can do likewise. Consult with your doctor. Get an opinion from your doctor. Some of you would have taken the decision already without even checking the doctor because you believe that's the right thing to do. But for those of you who are confused or who are on the fence, I suggest you consult your doctor or consult the kid's doctor. They're involved in sports, active sports. Okay? And you need to know what's the best thing for them, what the doctors are suggesting. Okay? I'm certain that, and I believe in our medical experts in Grenada, or doctors in Grenada, especially when it comes to that. And I'm very, very certain that they will give you the best advice. Do not depend on what friends say. Okay? Do not depend on what friends say. All right? Do what is necessary. Let me see. Roger Augustine, I'm having my daughter still do her workouts. Okay, that's nice. No, that's nice to know, Roger. That's nice to know because I was wondering, yeah. I am hoping. I'm hoping to. Well, I mean, it's so sad, Roger, that I'm stressing with you as well because it seems as if just every time. We believe that she is there to do what is necessary. Something, first time around, it was the teachers on strike. Then when I say on strike, you know what I mean. Forgive me for saying strike, teachers. Then it was COVID. So we still haven't really seen our true potential at like an intercall, for example. It's so sad. And I know you said some time ago that it may be sad that she may leave secondary school without competing in an intercall championship. And we don't know. It's heading that way for some, because we don't know what lies ahead for 2022. The rate we go in, we don't know what is in store for 2022. So it's good to know that she's still doing her workouts, and that, I'm just hoping, really, really hoping that there's something in the near future where, we will be able to see these young kids and then, especially those who have been, knocking on the door, I really hope that we'll be able to see them. And again, it's not just the mini meet, and you will agree with me, Roger. It's not just the mini meet. It's not really appealing. It does not, I don't think the athletes and the officials take sometimes the mini meets that serious, and the coaches take it. I mean, there are those who do, okay, but there are those who don't really take it serious, So I'm looking forward to seeing Shanti. That's Shanti Augustine. If for those of you who may be wondering, I'm really looking forward to see that Shanti gets going. Let me see. Yes, my brother, we are not deterred. She will continue to train and be ready. Good to know. Good to know. My regards to Shanti Augustine. Folks, just remember that name. For those of you who don't know, remember that name. Okay? Alana says, Shanti Augustine, hopefully we get to see her at National Champs. Fingers crossed. Impressive young lady. Hopefully I spelled her name correctly. No, you didn't. But that's all right. That's all right, Alana. But I said it correctly. Yeah. So, but while we are that, probably a nice segue to end. I can tell you of two. That's Roger and others. I can tell you of two organizations that are in a more infancy stage. One, you would have heard my good friend Ali McIntyre speaking on a recent program regarding putting together something. But by the way, it's not, while the focus will be on relays, etc., it's not just relays, right? He believes in, by extension, that giving our athletes that opportunity to compete. And I know Alana may have heard about it already because Fernando, John also has been speaking to both Ali and others, well, and myself as well, about that, creating opportunities. Because, we go to these meets and we see athletes from other islands, Jamaica, Bahamas, Trinidad, etc., Bermuda, Cayman Islands, competing. And we know that we have talents that are far better than them. And, so that is one area that they are really looking at, okay? And then there is another initiative, and they already constituted some groundwork already, some very committed Grenadians in terms of trying to put a proper structure in place to ensure that we have things like participation in pen relays, etc., and it will require resources, etc., and this sort of thing. Because to be honest with you, some of them are my friends, and I'm referring to the officials in Grenada, but they're not serious. I'm being honest about that. They are not serious. They're not serious about the welfare of the athletes. They're confined to just having a few activities every year, whether it's the national champs or the little mini meets, etc., and they feel comfortable about that. And sometimes, teams participating, and most times you hear one athlete, two athletes, three athletes, and then you hear, oh, we don't have funds, we don't have this, we don't have that. But for now, 2022, for example, there is such meet. You want certain calendars, for example, the NACA calendar, and you will see that there are certain meets already scheduled for next year. So tell me, what's the planning? What's the preparation? What's the, yes, you put things in place. Hey, in the final analysis, you may have all the resources, but you may have just 4 or 5 athletes. But the fact is you have it. But you can't be in a position where you have probably 10 or 15 athletes who are qualified or who are in a position to participate. And then you're saying you can only send 2 or 3 because you only have X amount of resources. Come on. You have a lot of time to plan. So I'm saying in that context, I'm saying you're not serious. You're not serious. And we have to call them out. And I'm saying, hey, some of them are my friends, and I say friends in the context I know them. But we have to be serious. We have to start giving these athletes the opportunity, and we have to cut out, this thing where every year we're hearing that we do not have the resources, we do not have this, we do not have the funds. But you have an entire year to prepare for that. You can go on the calendar now, and you can see not all, but some of the major events for 2022. I had Mike Sands, the president of NACAC, recently, and we were going through those things. And he was actually explaining XYZ. So that's why you see some territories have mass participation and others don't. Why they have mass? Yes, they prepare, they plan, They put things in place. They know that this is coming up in June of 2022. And for probably 10, 15 athletes, we may need XYZ. They don't wait until May and start thinking about and then realize that we don't have it. So I'm saying that to say that some of these good folks here in the diaspora, and sometimes they don't get the respect, by the way. And I know of certain people who have categorically said thanks, but no thanks. And they have reasons why, because they have had bad experiences with some of the folks in Grenada, right? Where, for example, they will organize certain things, send it to them, and I'm not particularly talking about association or whatever, sometimes even schools. And they will have to call later on, a few weeks after, to find out, by the way, did you receive the things I sent to you? Oh, yes, I did. I did receive it. I meant to call you. I meant, and, it's sad, but it's true, right? So some of them respectfully excuse themselves because they said, hey, listen, I've had this sort of experiences over the years, and there's no way I'm willing to get myself involved again. But there are those who say, hey, it's more for the kids than for these people, okay? And they will do whatever it takes, even if it means dealing directly with the parents or the coaches in some instances. Because, we can't, listen, we can't be singing the same song year after year, okay? And the time has come where people have to get serious, okay? And if no one wants to do it. So I'm saying that to say, Roger, I'm sympathetic to your cause. I understand the frustration, and Shanti has gone through, and others have gone through, and it's sad that we haven't seen the true potential of Ashanti in true form, albeit just the mini meets, etc., etc. And we really wanted to see these athletes competing against their peers, competitively, etc., etc. And in some instances, getting the opportunity to go outside of Grenada and compete, and things like that. So, but that's the situation as it is now. So, hopefully, as I said, these two initiatives, the one I spoke about with Ali McIntyre, who was on the program recently, and we probably have someone from this new initiative on the program when it's fully on board and things like that, to talk about it. But, something has to be done, and I'm fully supportive of those initiatives. In fact, I particularly asked to be, not too much involved, but along with it. So I given my full support, of those things. And I'm hoping that our athletes, benefited from that in the future. It's sort of sad what they have been going through. And I'm saying that to say, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, whether it's swimming, whatever it is, I'm hoping that those in authority reach out to the parents of their charges and, try to encourage them, because it's affecting in terms of the COVID-19, it's affecting. And, while you do not want to mandate, you may want to encourage, you may want to, and I say encourage in the context of, whether it's the masking, etc., making sure that they observe the protocols, all these sort of things. That's the important thing. Okay. Thank you once again, folks. I hope it was indeed interesting. Let me see something here. I'm working on my part out here in Canada with Canadian athletes. That's good. Rudy and Sylvan over in Toronto. He's also doing his part over in Canada as well, because there are a number of athletes in Canada, okay, of Grenadian parents as well, okay. And Alana say planning is key to success. We just finished our summer season and we are already planning for next summer. meets have been set and hotels have been booked. What is the association lacking that they cannot plan a year in advance? Well, that's the thing about it. They wait until, in some instances, until it's upon them to start planning. I am saying that you don't have to. Now is the time. And COVID in itself provided an opportunity for these associations to sit down, reflect, review, and plan. Okay? As Mike Sands was saying, that COVID probably have allowed his executive to meet more often than probably prior to COVID, albeit they do not have to gather physically, so they're meeting via Zoom and etc., but they're meeting on a regular basis. And in fact, he has confessed that they are getting more things done, right? It's cheaper because they do not have to pay airfare and accommodation, etc., and people not available due to other work commitments, blah, blah, blah. On Zoom, whether it's half an hour of your time, it's planned in advance, and they meet and they discuss and they're getting things done. My thing is that what is so hard in the Grenada context in terms of sitting down, meeting, planning, coming up with plans, and not waiting until the day to find out from government whether you can get assistance, or the Olympic Committee, whether you can get assistance. And sometimes these are the things that happen. Planning in advance. You can look at the calendar now, the athletics calendar, and I'm just using athletics as an example, and you can see certain meets for 2022. Planning is important. Yeah, hey, you may have planned for Carifta 2021 and it's, called off. So be it. We understand. But the fact is, you were prepared. There is no reason why you should not be planning for Carifta 2022 in Guyana, knowing for a fact the air link between Grenada and places like in South America and what you need to do, etc. All these things, thinking about whether Trinidad will still be open, air bridge between Grenada, Trinidad, Guyana, or Grenada, Barbados, Guyana, all these sort of things. People should be thinking about these things, Who are the athletes that have been shortlisted already based on last year and we did not get to participate, but still within the range or still in terms of age range? So these are the core of athletes. Albeit, some may drop, we may have to add, so we'll have to modify the team. But all these things should be in motion. And what is the budget we're working on for 2022? Albeit, it may be up or down, but here is our ceiling. Here is our maximum. So a maximum of 18 athletes or 20 athletes. That is the budget. All these things. Boy. Let me take some more comments before I wrap it up. They're coming in now. Oh my God. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Olivier. My son is now in Jamaica, thanks to Kwame Hippolyte and Coach Philip, but the virus is still keeping them from not training. Well, Kyle and others, that's Kyle Olivier and others, they have made it to Jamaica. By the way, folks, that is another thing we have to be looking at. I have a number of athletes who are in Jamaica. Well, those from Caracou started that training. But even before that, we had people like Hazel and Regis at that time. She's now Hazel Buckles. She attended school in Jamaica. Remember that? Remember covering Hazel, okay? But it's important to know that we have a number of athletes in Jamaica. And remember from earlier this year, Boys and Girls Champ, we had some of them who did pretty well. Zane McFarlane, Almaris, etc., the Caracou contingent, and there's a number of others from Caracou who have gone there again. So we have a very large contingent of athletes in Jamaica, and we should be looking out for them as well. So come Boys and Girls Champs, we should have a lot to be cheering for. Okay, Raul Garcia. All people, but especially young people, need to follow as many guidelines as possible and avoid COVID as much as possible. There are long-term effects from long COVID that can affect everyday life, but also prevent an athlete from competing or musician from playing instruments in band or singing in choir. It's a no-brainer, Yeah. So as he says, it's every reason why people should avoid. Here it is from my favorite doctor, Dr. Deborah Stevens John. Recently, some of the coaches held a webinar for the boxers in Grenada. Yes, that's true. Remember putting it up. It was a success. We had a presentation explaining COVID and its implications as it relates to contact sports. Doc is saying, I share your opinion. I always say, be prepared for the opportunity. Don't wait for the opportunity to start preparing. Yeah, let me go back to Doc. As I said, Doc is saying, as she said, I think it was about a week or so ago. Yeah, I remember contacting Doc and she was preparing for those things. It was around the International Boxing Day, right? Recently, some of the, for the boxers, and as she indicated, it was a success. Presentations explaining COVID and its implication as it relates to contact sports, as boxing is a contact sports as well. So that is nice to know. Nice to know that the coaches and the participants did this webinar. And again, it didn't call for Doc and others to get into a room and, presentation and blah, blah, a webinar. Everyone can participate. So whereas under COVID protocols, you may have only be allowed to have, let's say, 10 in a room, space out, etc., etc. Here she had a webinar where she could have had 100, unlimited, and participate, slides, presentation, do everything that you could have done in a room. Again, it's cost effective because Doc doesn't have to worry about refreshments and participants getting to the venue and getting back, etc., etc. You at your leisure, at home, wherever you are, in the kitchen, wherever you are, you can be part of that webinar. So again, it brings to the point how effective that could be, and more participation, etc., etc. Very good, Doc. Nice to hear that. And by the way, folks, it's, as I said, one of my favorite doctors. So, you have my stamp of approval. Get to know her if you're in Grenada. And especially for those involved in sports, parents as well, get to know Doc. Right, okay? If you need contact numbers, please get in touch with me. I'll surely be able to get you in touch with her. Roger Duncan is saying it's disheartening that the majority of issues presented with sports administration are still before us after 3 decades. Unfortunate. Very unfortunate, Roger. Very, very unfortunate. My hope is that, it's just my hope, that COVID may have opened the eyes of many, just as how it opened the doors, the door of opportunities, I will say, for serious administrators. And while we are, let me just, Doc is saying great participation. That's good. That's good to hear, Doc. Great participation. While we're on that, I thought about it sometime, that the issue with our sports administrators, or lack thereof, is not so much they become a problem, but when you ask the question, Roger, if we want to get rid of those who are there, who are we replacing them with? That's a good question. Who are we replacing them with? Who are the people who are ready? And there are those who are, okay? There are a few who, they are ready, they are willing, they have made it known that they are. But there are a lot of talkers, and they want change, but they're not willing to. So sometimes our sports administrators are there by default, and I don't blame them. Why should you? Come on. Who wouldn't want to be a prime minister? Who wouldn't want to be a president? Who? Come on. if I get to be the president of the United States, you feel I would want to be it. You know? So, you know, I'm saying that to say that we have to ensure that people are positioned to take up the mantle. So you cannot just be saying we want change, but nobody's ready for it. And sports administration, sports administrators, the work of sports administrators now are becoming not too, I wouldn't want to say complex, but while it's demanding, it's not like how it was, as you will say, 30 years ago. Some of them want to do the things that they have been doing 30 years ago. And some people just want to be in it because they believe it brings some level of authority and power and etc., etc. But they're not committed to the cause. And I use football as an example, and I'm saying it because I have been around sports for the better part of 30 years. And I've seen from time to time, there are people, and again, football, oh boy, committed, and I'm going in there to change things, and I'm going in there to do this and that, and blah, blah, blah. You know, and they come to the program. That time I'm hosting the Saturday's program. And they come into the studio and they give you the whole this, that, and the other. Some of them I still have, you know, I laugh at those things sometimes, because when I go back and read and listen some of the tapes, etc., etc., and I'm hearing the voices, because some of them are audio tapes, you know, and I'm hearing the voices and I'm, you know, things like that. And I'm just laughing because they were planning to do this and they were planning to change this and blah. And I wouldn't fall for this and I wouldn't encourage this. Roger, when they got in there, in a matter of weeks, everything turned, you know, and you ask yourself, wait now, this person, that is what they were saying. They were planning to do this. They wanted to change this. They wanted to blah, blah, blah. So that is the problem, in terms of sports administrators. That is the problem. So how do we change that? I don't know, you know. I don't know. Folks, I want to thank you for being part of the program. Always a pleasure discussing with you. And I know there are folks who are, you know, always, you know, have various perspectives. And it just shows you that, you know, there are people who have sports at heart. And sports, and in this case, Grenada, they have it at heart. And they are willing to see things change. They are willing to see things change. And for some, I'm hoping that you get involved, you'll be part of the change. Don't be afraid, okay? If you really want to, you know. And when there's the opportunity to speak out, you speak out, you know. It will change after a period of time because people will get left, they will get left, okay? They will get left. But again, I want to leave you with the advice that you should consult your doctor, you know, especially the parents of kids who are involved in active sports. Please consult your doctors or their doctors, hear what they have to say regarding the whole issue of the vaccination, COVID-19, and things like that. Don't depend on the internet. Don't depend solely on the internet. Too many conspiracies out there, and you will be confused. You will be left confused, and it may be too late. So, in the interest of your sons and daughters, and especially in the context of their going out and things like that, so, and you know, to safeguard yourself and others at home and things like that, so consult your doctor. Hear what they have to say regarding that. What's their opinion regarding your son or daughter being, you know, vaccinated? But in some cases, we could understand because they're young. You know, some of them are under 12, some of them are under, you know, they're just 15, etc., etc. So yeah, you know, it's understandable. But what we need to do is to ensure that they continue to observe the protocols. You know, wash their hands. Cover their face and mouth, you know, the masking, very important, and social distancing where possible. Please do that. Avoid the crowds, avoid, you know, these events. Some of them are illegal, hopefully, that the public support the authorities in ensuring that these illegal gatherings are reported, because it's in the interest of, folks, because you may say, oh, that's not my business, but ultimately it may affect, and it may affect, because it means that your workplace may have to close because of such and such. It means that your school will have to remain closed because of such and such. It means that you may not be able to get the services that you need because of such and such. So yeah, do not say that it's not your business. It is your business. So if you see things that you think should not be, and it's illegal, it's wrong, you should report it to the authorities, because it will affect you some way or the other, as it is affecting you now. I'm certain nobody wants to be locked down. Nobody wants to go under curfew. Nobody wants to be in a no movement period. Certainly, you don't want to. You want to have that level of freedom, etc., etc. But the only how you can have that is if things are done right. And with 280 plus cases per day on average now, well, let's say at least 200 average per day, things are not right. Things are not right. Yes, folks, thank you very much once again. And I hope to be with you on Thursday, God's willing, hopefully from another state. I wouldn't tell you where, but from another state, I will be with you on a program, hopefully on Thursday, okay? We may have to juggle a bit. I'll let you know during the week. But I want to thank you for being part of the program. Always a pleasure with you being on this program. And I look forward to you being with me again. It's always a pleasure hearing from you, hearing from what you're doing. Thank you once again, Roger. And as you said, continue with the training with Shanti and others. Alana, thank you very much. Fernando, all those. Dr. Stephen, thank you very much for your input as well. And I want to thank all those who been part of the program. You enjoy the weekend. Be safe. And remember, I don't want to say be vaccinated, but if you can do, please do it. It's just an encouragement. It's not a mandate, just an encouragement. Thank you very much.